Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Gallant.
Here.
Assemblyman Gurr. Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblyman Miller. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Chair Watts.
And I am here. Thank you. We have all members present. We have a quorum. Members, today we have 2 bill hearings on our agenda. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you'd like to provide testimony today, please sign in at the table in the back and provide a business card to the secretary if you have one. Please turn off your or silence your electronic devices. Members will be looking at materials on their laptops, so please don't take that as a sign of disrespect. If you would like to provide testimony or public comment by phone, you can find the information to call in on our committee agendas, which are publicly posted, including on the Nevada Legislature's website. We'll ask anyone providing public comment to limit their remarks to 2 minutes, and we ask anyone speaking to the committee to please state and spell their name clearly for the record before proceeding, and be sure to identify yourself for the record each time before you speak. With that, we have 2 items on our agenda, and we'll go in order. So we'll start with Assembly Bill 315. With that, I'll open the hearing on AB 315, which establishes various provisions relating to geothermal energy. Welcome back to the committee, Assemblywoman Hardy.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Watts and members of the Growth and Infrastructure Committee. It's nice to be back here for a second time today. For the record, I am Assemblywoman Melissa Hardy. I represent Assembly District 22 in Clark County. That's Melissa-Hardy. I'm here today to present Assembly Bill 315, which establishes various provisions relating to geothermal energy. And with me today to present this bill is John Karakalakis from Western Way. So with your permission, I'll provide some background information, and then I will hand it over to Mr. Karakalakis, who will go through the amendment and give his remarks. So the purpose of AB 315 is to start the conversation on cutting down on red tape and providing educational resources to developers to promote the growth of the geothermal industry in Nevada. As we move towards a sustainable future, it is crucial to embrace all forms of renewable energy, including geothermal, to diversify our energy portfolio and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Nevada, with its abundant geothermal resources, stands at the forefront of this energy revolution. The state's unique geology, characterized by a high concentration of geothermal reservoirs, makes it an ideal candidate for harnessing the Earth's natural heat for electricity generation. Already, Nevada ranks as one of the top geothermal energy producers in the United States, with several operational geothermal power plants. Geothermal energy has several advantages over other forms of renewable energy. Unlike solar and wind energy, which are intermittent and depend on weather conditions, geothermal energy is available 24/7, providing a reliable source of energy that can meet our energy needs year-round. Additionally, geothermal energy does not produce greenhouse gas emissions, which makes it a clean and sustainable alternative to fossil fuels. The environmental effects of geothermal energy depend on how geothermal energy is used or how it is converted to useful energy. Direct use applications and geothermal heat pumps have almost no negative effects on the environment. In fact, they can have a positive effect by reducing the use of energy sources that can have negative effects on the environment. To ensure that geothermal energy reaches its full potential, we need to encourage streamlining local permitting processes. By simplifying and expediting the approval process for new geothermal projects, we can accelerate the deployment of this technology and attract more investment in this sector. This in turn will create jobs, spur economic development, and help Nevada to remain a leader in the renewable energy landscape. With that, Nevada can further capitalize on its unique geothermal resources. By doing so, we can pave the way for a cleaner, more sustainable, and prosperous future for our state, our nation, and our planet. So now I'd like to turn it over to my co-presenter, and he will give some information and then go through the bill, which you will see there is an amendment, so we're not working off the original bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Chair Watts, members of the committee. My name is John Karakoulakis, JohnKarakoulakis, and I am with the organization The Western Way. We're a nonprofit organization that works across Western states, engaging in what we see as common sense policies on conservation and energy policies across the West. I'm here today, as the Assemblywoman mentioned, to kind of walk through the amendments that we're kind of proposing here on Assembly Bill 315. But first, I'd like to thank Assemblywoman Hardy for working with all the public and private stakeholders to come up with this amendment and kind of get the ball rolling here on expanding geothermal across Nevada. We've kind of seen in other states a pretty concerted effort from Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, really putting resources, incentives, and educational activities towards geothermal and kind of all aspects of it, from utility scale to enhanced geothermal and heat source pumps and things like that. And a lot of that's being driven by the federal funds that are available and are expected to be coming out. And I think that's where we're trying to land here, is to ensure that Nevada stays at the top and is able to utilize all the great geothermal resources in the state. So just real quick to kind of run through the amendments. We're basically retaining Section 1 of the bill, which would have the Director of the Office of Energy coordinate with local governments and representatives of the geothermal industry to recommend best practices for issuing permits for the use and development of geothermal, and how those processes and siting and permits can be streamlined to speed up the development. I think we've seen this a lot from various energy sources in terms of transmission or, just getting things permitted is a major hindrance, and really need to do what we can to try to speed that process up. The amendment proposes to retain Section 27 of the introduced bill with a slight change in directing the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, not the Governor's Office of Energy, to conduct a study during the 2023-24 interim concerning the expanded use of geothermal in the state, and submit a report of its findings to the Director of Legislative Counsel Bureau for transmittal in the 83rd session of the legislature. And then finally, the amendment would remove sections 2 through 26 of the bill. Lastly, we would encourage the Director of the Office of Energy to apply for federal grants related to geothermal resource development. As I kind of mentioned, there are a lot of funding opportunities available, and just wanted to highlight that in the bill that Nevada would be looking to apply for those where applicable and when it makes sense. I think obviously no two states are the same, but we think this is a good process and a good framework to move geothermal forward for Nevada. So I'll turn it back to Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Melissa Hardy, for the record. And so that is our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you both very much for your presentation today. Members, are there any questions for the presenters? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair Watts. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Hardy, for the presentation and your co-presenter. So I know you're going to go to a study, but could you talk to us a little bit about where you would be pinpointing the geothermal, just how this works, right? For those of us who, we get our electricity from the wall, and we don't necessarily know how it's created in these types of situations.
Sure. And, sorry, I'm John Kerkalakis for the record. Yeah, not to get too into the wonky details, but, essentially, geothermal taps heat underneath us. I mean, it pipes in water and it can heat that, it can bring that back and convert that energy that's from the earth and use that in electricity at kind of its basic form. Nevada sits on a vast amount of geothermal potential. I think about 9.4% of Nevada's electricity is roughly currently coming from geothermal, and that could increase. That's about 235 megawatt of electricity, and the potential, they say, is about 3,700 megawatts of electricity. So there's a lot to tap. There's a lot of neat technologies going into the field right now. From hydraulic fracturing in the oil and gas industry, we've learned a lot more on how to access the heat and do better drilling techniques, access it more efficiently. The federal government in Utah has about a $200 million investment. It's called the Forge Project, and it's really looking at enhanced geothermal, what they call, and it can really it can be at shallower depths, and it can be quicker to kind of get these wells developed. So I would say it's a very promising field, and we see this study as really helping ensure that Nevada remains a leader in it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff that someone like me really wants to know. When we're talking about using these advanced practices, you mentioned fracturing, which obviously has a lot of potential, but has shown in other parts of the United States that we've had issues with fracturing causing earthquakes and tremors where we didn't have them before, water systems being contaminated. So those are things that I'm concerned about, and I'd like to know if they are going to be delineated out as part of the study that you want to have done.
Yes, this is John Kerkalakis again. I think the idea of the study would be to look at the impacts as well as the benefits and see where those are. And I think with the information from these federal projects that we're seeing and private projects as well, there's a lot of information out there to glean, if there are concerns. And again, I don't want to overstate too much the utility scale. I mean, there is also residential and commercial applications of heat pumps that are considered geothermal that don't require large wells at all. So.
And I would just add, Melissa Hardy, for the record, that's the intention of doing the study group, is bringing people together, the stakeholders that work in this space, and can address those various concerns and issues, so that it's one group discussing all of those things.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman Miller?
Thank you. Thank you for the time, Chair. Just a quick question. As you talk about the different groups that'll be involved, can you speak to who are the different stakeholders that would participate in the study?
John Kerkalakis again. I think we would aim to cast a pretty wide net from public and private sector and get feedback from a wide variety of kind of existing interest in geothermal, and also community members that might have an interest or, any concerns, and look at that. And I think we've talked kind of on the state side with the agencies that are engaged in this already, some of the trade associations out there, some of the other interests. So.
Just so when you talk about the community perspective, do you have you outlined yet what I guess, sectors of the community you might be looking forward? Like, have you started to put together that list of we need these folks, these folks, these folks, these folks from the different public, private sectors, community level, all of that?
Melissa Hardy for the record. No, and in the bill, we didn't, give a specific list of those because we want to, again, reach out to different folks and kind of build that and not have it just really prescriptive in the bill. So that's why it's not just delineated in the bill.
I'm done after this share. So I appreciate that. I think that is, a good idea to have it as broad and as many people participate as possible. I've also learned since being here that sometimes you have to be specific in the legislation on who participates to ensure that you're getting all the necessary voices to the table. So I would maybe rethink that approach and see if there's a way that you can kind of narrow down or line out a little more specifically who you want to target, and then also, leave it open to add. But I think you probably should have some very specific people groups within that to identify that need to be a part of the study. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Melissa Hardy for the record, and thank you, I appreciate that, and I'm happy to discuss that, with the chair and those as to what we should definitely have and how to address that, so we're happy to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Glad to follow up on that. And I think I and some others on this committee have worked on some other studies and may have some ideas that may be relevant for consideration. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Chair. And this is an interesting bill. I think geothermal has definitely caught the imaginations, right, of homeowners and industrial applications, especially in a state like ours where we really are living in areas where the ground acts as a heat sink for a lot of the year, right? But I have some questions about what the intention of and how you think that this study is, how it's going to focus, right, and the issues that might come up during that study and what the expectation is for that when it returns to us next session, particularly around there's a difference, right, between the use of geothermal energy and the impact that would have on the state. That's kind of an economic conversation, right, versus the environmental conversation, which is really where the permitting comes into play. So in the conceptual amendment, the context of the study, can you tell us a little bit about how you envision that study including these kind of two balancing pieces?
Hi, John Kirklakis for the record. Yeah, I think we would foresee it having both of those. Again, kind of the benefits, the impacts, and really looking at the full kind of scope of it and seeing, does it make sense to streamline permitting processes? Should there be different processes? I mean, I think it seems like geothermal is poised to kind of take off here, and I think this would help make sure we do it right and make sure that the safeguards are in place, but also that it's not something that doesn't take off because there's not the kind of environment that companies will come in and do it. Looking at other states, Colorado just created a $30 million incentive program for geothermal development and kind of a cost share. So they're putting serious dollars towards it. And I think that's something where it's, we want to make sure that the study looks at that, sees what that kind of economic side as well as the other impacts.
I think, and I work in the permitting world, and I know I feel like I'm beating a dead horse in this building because I've talked about this like 800 times over the last 2 weeks. But I think when it comes to the red tape around these types of projects, Sometimes it's just in the transparency of expectations between the parties, right? The proponent of the project and the regulatory agency. And in this case, it might be worth maybe consulting with the Department of Natural Resources on what are areas that we should point to in the statute as being reviewed in this process, so that we can kind of tie in the interests of both sides and how to overcome those red tape burdens that you mentioned earlier. I would be interested in seeing that. I think better directive for that study could be helpful in getting to a functional report at the end of it that helps us know where we should go, instead of have it be kind of an amorphous, like, economic conversation, kind of exclusively.
Melissa Hardy for the record, and thank you. I appreciate your insight. And, that's exactly the intent, is that we want this to move forward. I think it's been said several times that this is across the country, this source of energy is coming, and Nevada is poised to be a leader in this. And so we want it to move forward, both efficiently but responsibly. And so that I totally agree with you, that when we come back, we have something laid out of how we can do and address both of those things, so that we're ready to promote and encourage that type of energy. So thank you.
Thank you. We very much appreciate the clarification. Vice Chair Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like a little bit of clarification on, is there an example of a study that you are moving toward that's been done somewhere else, right? Do we have any kind of a sample document that would begin to point you in the direction that you're heading, right, to give us a little bit more clarity? And then secondarily, it says here that we're going to transmit the report to the Legislative Council Bureau for the 83rd session of the legislature. In my experience, we have often done studies in the state that come to the legislature but then end up on a shelf or not utilized. I'm curious to know if there are potential stakeholders that we should be sharing this information with, or posting on a website, right, for public information, so that we don't lose the results of the study.
Hi, John Kerklakis. Yeah, I think on the first part, for some potential studies, right now the Western Governors Association is compiling, it's kind of an initiative of the Colorado governor to come up with policy recommendations and studies on geothermal. That'll be out this summer. I think we see that as a good format and hopefully very helpful, kind of combining federal and state policy concepts and ideas, and just a good snapshot of where we are. Texas recently published a report, pretty in-depth. It's probably more kind of talking about the resources and things that are available, but it's a very in-depth look at geothermal in the state and where the opportunities are, where some policy opportunities, roadblocks, things like that. So I think there's definitely some out there. I think we would hope we'd find more as well as we dig into it. But I think there's some examples, and we'd be happy to send those to you. And I agree in terms of seeing, no one wants to see another report just sit on a desk. So I think given the interest from industry and kind of where geothermal's moving, I think this would get a lot of interest outside, the building. And, we'd certainly be willing to do everything we can to help publicize it and get it out there.
Thank you.
Melissa Hardy for the record, and I would just say, yes, I agree. We don't want just a study that we're just doing it for the exercise of doing it. But I agree with the point that, this is something that's going to, geothermal is going to keep advancing. And so I don't see that this would just lead to nothing, but absolutely, wherever we need to share that report, that's what we want to do so that this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, additional questions? I have a couple. So one, just following up on some of the things that were brought up by the vice chair, do you have in your initial conversations any sense of the timeline for the completion of this study? Is it something that is anticipated to be done kind of closer to the end of the next interim, so it would kind of go to the legislature shortly before it convenes? is this something that might be done a little bit sooner in the interim, and then there might be a little bit of opportunity to review those recommendations and any possible policy changes either during our legislative interim process or before most of our bill draft requests are due.
Melissa Hardy for the record. Thank you, Chair, for the question. My hope would be that, yes, we could get the makeup of the, group together and then start discussing this because, this is quite a large topic to be discussing and there are a lot of interested parties. And so I would like to get that information input so that, just to your point, when we're thinking about policy, it's kind of, vetted out before we get into a legislative session. So it would be my hope that it would be done, I don't know, maybe set up and already started by sometime in 2023 so that we have more time and then we're not on closer to session, trying to figure out what's good policy and what isn't. So that would be my hope and intention.
Thank you very much for that. And well, we can follow up on some of the details on that and make sure that it gets to the relevant growth in infrastructure committee, whether that's in the interim, to make sure that some of the folks that are going to be involved on these issues moving forward have that information as well. One of the other questions I just wanted more of a clarification again. So you'd mentioned heat pumps. I've visited, I think a few of the members on this committee have visited the Pepper Mill in Reno, which has a geothermal heating system. So would you consider geothermal heat systems and not just the generation of electricity through geothermal power to be within kind of the purview of this bill?
Mr. Chair, yes, I think we'd, again, take that broad approach and just in the fact that there's a lot of new technology coming online as well, so we'd want to leave it more broad than narrow.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, so we see two agencies kind of noted here, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Governor's Office of Energy, and I know that we have somebody from the Division of Minerals here. I know that there's also been some research done through our Bureau of Mines and Geology. So if you could briefly kind of talk about, I think specific to the bill, why the specific entities are referenced in the specific sections. For example, why DCNR and not GOE is tasked with carrying out the study, and then just kind of any other high-level thoughts about the different state agencies that are involved in geothermal.
Sure. Mr. Chair, John Kerklakis again. And yeah, I think we're trying to look through and be as pragmatic as possible on kind of the different components of where the agencies would be involved and reached out to those agencies and talked with them. And, I think we'd be open to changes if it needed to be, or if it wasn't the right fit. But I think this was kind of the initial best take to make it as kind of putting it with the best agency as possible.
Melissa Hardy for the record. Yes. Okay. All of those groups that you mentioned, we have met with, as the stakeholders in working on this bill. And so as far as we mentioned earlier, as far as the federal funds, the Office of Energy is already going to be engaged in that. So just to make sure that they are, this is on their radar for those funds. And then, like he said, where to house the study. There have been ongoing conversations of where it should be and who will be able to best perform that and carry it out. So that's still, still talking about that. But, we're open. We just want it to be somewhere that it can actually be done and that we're getting to the goals and the intent of the legislation ultimately.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that additional information. All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you both very much for the presentation. With that, we will open testimony. We'll begin with testimony in support of Assembly Bill 315. Anyone wishing to provide testimony in support, either here in Carson City or down in Las Vegas, please come forward. And you can begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Greg Esposito, representing the Nevada State Pipe Trades, which is a affiliate of the United Association of Plumbers and Pipefitters, an international organization. It is one of our priorities to add and increase the amount of geothermal in energy portfolios across the country. And so I appreciate the bill's sponsor meeting with me so we can discuss the bill and the adding of geothermal to Nevada's portfolio, and look forward to working with her and potentially the stakeholder group that's getting put together to bring this resource to Nevada. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Whoever would like to go next.
Good afternoon. My name's Gabriela, Gabriela Olmedo, Olmedo. I'm an associate at Advanced Energy United. We are a clean energy business association working to make the energy we use clean, affordable, and reliable. We represent over 100 companies across the clean energy spectrum, such as large-scale renewables, solar, storage, energy efficiency providers, electric vehicle companies, and geothermal developers. I'm speaking on behalf of our association to express support for AB 315 with the conceptual amendment. Geothermal will be a key electric baseload resource for the future grid of Nevada. This resource is one which Nevada has in abundance and a unique competitive advantage. Developing it will be critical to ensuring a reliable and affordable clean energy future. This bill addresses a few issues that the industry sees as essential for adoption of this innovative technology. First, permitting can impede growth, and this bill takes important steps toward addressing that barrier. Second, an interim study is a great step forward in planning the use of this technology, which we expect will prove to be a major resource in Nevada. And finally, this bill takes advantage of the unprecedented federal funding moment before us to lower the cost of development and therefore lower costs for Nevada ratepayers. And making best use of these incentives is vital to ensuring the industry can and will invest in and come to Nevada. We're excited to see this bill as a signal for a geothermal-ready Nevada. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you to Assemblywoman Hardy for bringing this important bill forward.
Thank you for your testimony. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Isaac Hardy, representing the Nevada Conservation League. We just want to echo the comments you've heard here today and thank Assemblywoman Hardy for sponsoring this bill. We support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Susan Fisher with McDonald Carano speaking today on behalf of CERC, which is an international geothermal company. We operate in Nevada under the name of Avalon. We currently serve 105 homes in southwest Reno with geothermal heat. It's just heat exchange. So we purchase municipal water and run the pipes next to each other, and we serve the 105 homes. And it's on a flat rate. We are a regulated utility, but it's regulation light because our rates are tied to that of natural gas. So it goes up and down as natural gas does. But for these particular customers, they get a flat rate. A lot of them have swimming pools. A lot of them have pipes underneath their sidewalks and driveways. We support this bill. Geothermal has sort of been treated as a redheaded stepchild in the state for a long time. We haven't enjoyed the same sorts of incentives as wind and solar have, so we support anything that is going to help promote geothermal. We're also working very quickly with the city of Reno on their new swimming pool and community facilities that they're putting in Reno. There's a swimming pool that over 100 years ago was heated with geothermal heat. It degraded over time. The pipes degraded because they didn't use heat exchange. They just pumped the cruddy water into the pool. But now this will be used with heat exchange. And we also are under contract with the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority to provide geothermal heat for space heating and water heating for that facility as well. So we thank the Assemblywoman for bringing this forward. We look forward to working with her on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Fisher. Seeing no one else in Carson City at this time, we'll go down to Las Vegas. Please go ahead whenever you're ready. Oh, we can't hear you. You need to push the button before you speak.
I'm sorry, Tony Simmons, TonySimmons, for the record. I fully support this. I'd like to address two comments that were made. There was a concern about earthquakes due to fracturing. Here in Nevada, we had a shortage of earthquakes from the 60s through the 90s, so we made our own out of the Nevada task site. We had 900 earthquakes. We had 2 a week. We survived them real well. The other issue is the issue of contamination. They've been using a similar technology for deep sea oil exploration for decades. They've pretty well got the issue of contamination, figured out from the oil industry. So the technology, a lot of the concerns we have already been resolved. We just don't realize it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else in Las Vegas at this time and nobody else in Carson City Broadcast Production Services. Can we see if anyone wishes to provide testimony in support of AB 315 by phone?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 315, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 994, please press star 6 to unmute your phone. You are unmuted and you may begin.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ben Serurier. That's BenSerrurier. Thank you, Chairman Watts and members of the committee. I lead government affairs for Fervo Energy. We're an enhanced geothermal energy developer with significant resource holdings in Nevada and a growing office in Reno. We support AB 315 with the amendment as addressed earlier. And I want to thank Assemblymember Hardy for her leadership on this bill. Nevada has long been a leader in geothermal, and new technical innovations and the demand for 24/7 clean energy are creating huge new opportunities for growth. Fervo Energy is currently completing our first commercial scale enhanced geothermal drilling project near Winnemucca, which will help provide clean energy to power Google data centers later this year. In the coming years, we're excited about making significant investments in utility scale enhanced geothermal energy projects in Nevada. Geothermal, as been mentioned before, is clean, reliable, has a small footprint, and a well-developed America-based supply chain and workforce. Fervo supports AB 315. We look forward to working with the sponsor, members of the committee, and all stakeholders in a bipartisan approach to helping Nevada maintain and grow its position as a clean, firm energy powerhouse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. BPS, next caller, please.
There are no other callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 315. Seeing no one coming forward at this time in Carson City and no one in Las Vegas at this time, Broadcast Production Services, is there anyone on the phone wishing to provide testimony in opposition?
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 315, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Chair Watts and members of the committee, my name is Barry Levinson, BARILEVINSON, a volunteer member of Sierra Club's Legislative Committee. On behalf of the club and our more than 30,000 members and supporters statewide, I am speaking in opposition of Bill AB 315. AB 315 creates the Geothermal Energy Systems Demonstration Program, which will help jumpstart Nevada's geothermal industry. Sierra Club generally supports geothermal energy as long as these facilities are developed with strong environmental controls. Geothermal in Nevada has potential to contribute low carbon emission based energy and is definitely preferable to fossil fuel or nuclear powered plants. Our main reservation about this bill is that the demonstration program does not seem to take into account adverse effects on the environment. Geothermal plants can have tremendous adverse effects on surface water resources, and any study of the technology needs to critically analyze where we should and should not be building these projects. We believe that this study should involve participation of relevant stakeholders, including wildlife biologists, hydrologists, environmental groups, indigenous tribes, and independent scientists. We are also concerned about the streamlined approval process that might encourage speed over adequate review of the negative impacts of a geothermal plant. In summary, Sierra Club opposes this geothermal demonstration program because it doesn't seem to take into account the effects on the environment, indigenous interests, and wildlife. We could support this bill if it is amended to include these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. BPS, do we have any additional callers?
There are no additional callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to testimony in the neutral position on Assembly Bill 315. What a sight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Patrick Donnelly. I'm the Great Basin Director with the Center for Biological Diversity. I haven't testified before this committee before. We're a nationwide nonprofit, and we've had a 20-year presence in Nevada fighting for endangered species. We are in neutral on this bill. We have been working on geothermal energy quite extensively in recent years and starting to probe some of these environmental impacts from geothermal energy. You know, it turns out there's an extensive body of peer-reviewed literature that shows geothermal energy frequently drying up hot springs that it's sited near. Hot springs are oases of biodiversity in Nevada. There are many species that rely on the ecosystems formed by hot springs. In recognition of this, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually recently designated the Dixie Valley toad, a hot spring-dependent toad in Churchill County, as endangered under the endangered species list because of a geothermal power plant proposed to be built right next to it. In Gerlach in northern Nevada, there is a lawsuit currently by local residents because there's a geothermal power plant proposed for right in their town in Gerlach, and that can have social impacts on people in their homes. So we support geothermal energy and renewable energy, but we support putting it in the right places. There's the right place and the wrong place. And without a plan, we don't know where those right and wrong places are. And right now, it's kind of been the Wild West on geothermal permitting on BLM land with associated negative impacts, including, listing species under the Endangered Species Act who don't need to be listed, but for this inappropriately cited geothermal power project. So we think a study on the best places and the best ways to develop geothermal energy is critically important. And we will get to support on this bill if language is inserted to ensure that environmental impacts and appropriate range of stakeholders are brought into the study. This seems like a really important step for Nevada to advance geothermal energy while limiting environmental impacts, limiting environmental litigation, and limiting conflict that comes around inappropriate siting. So we're happy to work with the bill sponsor, and we hope to get to yes on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Director Settlemeyer, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Watson, Committee on Natural Resources. James Settlemeyer, Director of the Division of Conservation and Resources. We are neutral with concerns on the bill, specifically within Section 3. Within the original bill, DCNR was not inside of this bill. This amendment now brings us into it. In that respect, the Governor has issued Executive Order 23-007, calling for a very diverse energy portfolio, including geothermal. Nevada currently sits, according to the U.S. Energy Administration, as number 2 in geothermal after California. We have tremendous potential within the state, but within that aspect, one of the divisions that are within us is NDEP, Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, whose job is to regulate this industry. More specifically, they issue the underground injection control permits. In that respect, being regulatory, we feel it is improper to have us to be a stakeholder within the discussion, for we should not be putting forth an industry or putting down an industry. We are the regulators of it. In that respect, we would respectfully request to be left within the Department of Energy. I've had discussions with Mr. McClinton on that, or trying to find a more logical place for it to be housed. This objection, of course, came internally from the head of NDEP, Jennifer Carr, and I agree with it, that it would be improper in that respect. We're supportive of the concept. In that respect, in many respects, I'm here right now at the table to make sure I'm not on the menu. So that being said, I do agree with the concept of trying to delineate the groups. Hopefully the list is not completely exclusive, because there's always a danger you'll leave somebody out. But I do agree with Assemblywoman Armstrong and Mr. Miller trying to discuss a little bit of that scope, from the Division of Minerals, from NDEP to the industry, to even Division of Water Resources, the tribes, of course, NACO, and local communities. But I'd be hesitant to ever say that is the end of said list. If you wish, Mr. Chairman, I'm more than willing to take questions at this time.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Director Settlemyer. You sounded almost like the Director of the Office of Energy for a second there. Did very well. And as far as lists, that's why we have the words including but not limited to. With that, members, do you have any questions for the department? Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Director. And I just want to clarify what you said. So you don't think that the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources should be where the study is conducted? It should be conducted under the Department of Energy?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman James Settlemyer, Director, Division of Conservation and Natural Resources. Yes, in discussions with Dwayne McClinton, we're trying to find a better place to house it if he doesn't have the bandwidth or staff necessary to accomplish it. Obviously, our bailiwick with an NDEP is, again, the regulation of it, and currently we're at 24% understaffed. So I would hate to pull someone away from being a regulator to have further discussion of the industry. Obviously, we would be involved to the best of our ability to provide information, so everybody's making the best, calculations at that time.
And that was going to be my second follow-up, but that doesn't mean you'd want to be removed from being included in the study. You would like to be included as expertise in the regulatory world, but not as the conductor of the study.
Correct, Assemblywoman.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Director.
Thank you, Chairman.
Seeing nobody else in Carson City or Las Vegas at this time to provide testimony in the neutral position, BPS, do we have anyone wishing to provide neutral testimony on AB 315 by phone?
To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 315, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Assemblywoman, would you like to make any closing comments?
Thank you, Chair Watts. And just in closing, I think I just wanted to mention in some of the comments that were brought up in the testimony, I think just points to the reason for the study so that we can allow geothermal energy to move forward in a efficient and responsible manner and address a lot of those concerns so that it doesn't, get out ahead of us and then we're coming back in behind with problems and issues. So that's the exact reason for having the study. And yes, in regard to where to house the study, we will figure that out. And also, who we want to be on this committee. So I'd just like to thank you again for hearing AB 315, and we will continue to work with stakeholders to ensure we have a viable working product. And during the interim, it is my hope to create a working group with public and private stakeholders to promote the widespread adoption of geothermal energy across all sectors, from residential to commercial and industrial. I would urge your support of this important legislation in supporting the development of geothermal energy in Nevada. And thank you for the input that was given and for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and for the presentation, Assemblywoman, and we look forward to working with you to adjust the language based on some of the feedback that was heard today. With that, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 315, and I will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 384, which revises provisions governing motor vehicles. Welcome back, Assemblyman Hafen. And Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Gregory Hafen II. For the record, here with former Senator Warren Hardy, following up Assemblywoman Hardy, so thank you for the Family Day. We do appreciate combining the meetings. Today we are here to discuss Assembly Bill 384 related to governing of motor vehicles, and specifically trying to make it easier for people to obtain titles, a little bit easier than having to go to the DMV and go through the whole salvage vehicle process. And so, having said that, you should have a conceptual amendment that was provided to you via Nellis, and I'm going to have former Senator Warren Hardy go through the conceptual amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Warren Hardy today representing Nevada Pick-A-Part, and happy opening today to those of you who do worship baseball. It's a good day. Thank you to Mr. Hafen for his willingness to bring this forward, Mr. Chairman. I have in Las Vegas Eric Larkin, who is runs the Nevada Pick-A-Part in Nevada. And the bill before you today is not right, and that is not LCB's fault. That is my fault. LCB is currently working on an amendment. I did provide an amendment that should be on Nellis that just absolutely proves that I didn't get anywhere near law school. But it's a very high-level example of what we're trying to do with this legislation. So what we're here to do, my client's been in business in Las Vegas for many, 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 many years. And our business model is we buy vehicles that are essentially determined, in most cases, to be end of life. A vehicle that's been damaged in an accident, although most often we try to find vehicles that are in decent shape, because what we do, and I don't want to jump too far forward on the pictures that I sent you, but on the very last page, you'll see in the background these cars that are sort of up on stands. What people do in our business model is they come in, they pay us, I don't know what it is now, $2 or $3. They go in, they pull the part they need off the car, and then are able to buy it at a significant discount because they took the time to pull it off themselves. When those vehicles are picked over or on the lot for a certain amount of time, then they are discarded. They're the VIN's killed on them. They're no longer active vehicles for purposes of use on the road, and we sell them to a recycling company that then recycles them. In the last few years, last several years, as the economic downturn has hit, we occasionally get cars in. Well, we've always gotten cars in that are in really generally pretty good shape. They may have a blown transmission, they may have a blown engine, they may have some other problem with them. And we put them on the lot, we put them up on the stands, and people pick them apart. Well, in the last 10 or 15 years, as the economy has struggled, we've had more and more incidences of where customers will come in and say, can I just buy that truck? I just want that truck. I'll fix it. It needs an engine. I get it. It needs a transmission. I get it. I'll fix it. Can I buy the truck? And we have to tell them, yeah, you can buy the truck, but we can only sell it to you on a salvage title or a non-repairable title. In most cases, these would be sold on on salvage titles. So the title can be registered by the DMV. It can be operated on the street as a salvage or as a salvage vehicle. But the title is what we call branded. So now it's stuck on that title forever that it's a branded vehicle. The problem with that is if you go to resell that vehicle, even though there's nothing wrong with it, it's branded as a salvage title, and it absolutely devastates the value of the vehicle. It cuts it in half, sometimes worse. And so that's what we're here to address today, is we get more and more folks who are saying, I just need reliable transportation. In the past, it was more or less hobbyists that would say, I want to, that's a vehicle, that's an 85 Caprice, I want to restore that. But now we're actually seeing folks come forward to say, I need to get back and forth to my job, and I'll fix that truck. So let me give you an example. The pictures that you have in front of you, this is a 2008 Dodge Ram pickup with a blown engine that is sitting in our lot, and the first three pictures are of the truck. So you can see it's a perfectly good truck with a blown engine. And somebody will come up to us and say, I don't need a part off that truck, I want that truck. I'll go buy an engine, and they can buy an engine from us for $500. Now, buying an engine from us, there's no guarantee. What we guarantee is that it is a rebuildable engine. Might be a good engine, might not. So they're kind of rolling the dice on that $500. But if you go buy a brand new, not a brand new, a remanufactured engine for this truck. I had my client look it up this morning from AutoZone is $2,500. So this vehicle has a Blue Book value currently in the condition it's in the neighborhood of $12,500. So you buy this from us for probably in the neighborhood of $5,000, maybe $6,000, because it's a pretty clean truck. And then you put an engine in it for $2,500. So now you've got $7,500 to $8,500 into it. You've got reliable transportation. You've got a good vehicle that's worth $12,000. If it has a salvage title on it, however, you go to sell it, it's not going to be worth the money you put into it. The fourth picture is a picture of a Dodge Challenger, which has a bad fuel pump. Now, why wouldn't somebody fix a bad fuel pump? On a Dodge Charger, there's 2 fuel pumps, and it's very, very expensive. And somebody had obviously taken this to the mechanics. They gave them a price. They said, I'm going to buy a new car anyway. They just brought it to us. Occasionally, we'll get cars like this that have been given to charity. The charity, you've seen where charity will say, hey, bring us a car. Assemblywoman Brown May knows this very well. Bring us a car, and we will take those cars that they're not able to sell because they're not running, they're not operating. And they'll be in this kind of condition. And people will say, can I buy that car? And we have to say, yes, on a salvage title. Even hobbyists, when they hear it has to be on a salvage title, they're like, that kills the value. Please, can you give it to me on a rate? We can't. We have a used car license. We are a dealer. We can repair this vehicle, sell it, but it would have to be smogged and on a clean title before we can sell it. Here, the 2 examples I gave you are really, quite frankly, not very often. We get a dozen of those a year, maybe. The most likely one we get, and you're going to be very surprised if you look at the final picture of the 1980 Honda Civic that is in really good condition, and I don't know whether it's an engine on this one. I don't know what the challenge is on this one. But you look at that vehicle, and you would say, who would want that vehicle? The answer is, everybody wants that vehicle. It's a collectible. It's just we've gotten more questions about this vehicle. Can I buy this vehicle? And I don't know, maybe Eric might know, he'll be able to speak to it, but I don't know what's wrong with the car. But we've got people that desperately want to buy this for reliable transportation. And it's at a disadvantage to them to have to buy a vehicle and do the work on that they can do themselves and get a reliable vehicle if, when they're finished with that vehicle or are able to buy a better vehicle, the price, the resale value is diminished significantly. So what we hope to do with this legislation is create a carve-out, very narrow carve-out for auto wreckers on these types of vehicles that we can sell them on a clear title. So they're not branded because they don't need to be branded. When we buy vehicles that have been damaged in an accident, for the most part, we buy them at auto auctions, and they're already branded as titles that are non-repairable and can't be used. I have gotten questions about the smog situation. These vehicles cannot be registered and run on the street until they receive a smog. So it's not exempting any of these vehicles from the smog requirement. They still have to have a smog before they can register it and operate it on the vehicle. What we're trying to do is, in these cases where folks are looking for reliable transportation or are hobbyists, or in some cases, we don't know what they do with them. I'm sure there's people out there that flip them to make money. You can put $7,500 into this truck I just showed you and sell it from $12,000 to $13,000 and make a profit. I'm sure that happens too. I'm not condoning that because they don't. But you're able by law to do 2 or 3 of these vehicles a year without restriction. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the intent of the bill. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. I have been working with LCB. We had hoped to have a draft mock-up of the amendment for today. We were not able to do that. I've spoken with my friends at DMV. DMV supports the bill as originally drafted. I've obviously got to get them the new language. I spoke with the folks from the Auto Franchisees, Auto Dealers Association, and their concern is that we make sure we get this amendment not in the auto dealer section of the law, but in the auto wrecker section of the law, which is where we want to put it. We just want to allow us to provide clean titles on these vehicles, and we'll define that however is necessary to make everybody feel comfortable. But that's the intent of the bill, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to field any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll begin questions with Assemblyman Carter.
Good afternoon. So my question has to do with consumer protection. We hear these stories of other states that I'm assuming probably have laws similar to what you're proposing, where cars like out of New Jersey show up after floods, and they get out here, they start stinking, they find out that this car was rehabbed after a flood or something. And so there's a reason for salvage titles. And are there going to be controls to protect consumers from buying that Dodge thinking that it's perfect and it's never had a problem, but in reality, it's been in a wrecking yard?
Yes, so Warren Hardy for the record. So I asked my client that this morning, how do we get most of these vehicles? So vehicles are going to be in that condition generally are already going to be branded. I think, and I'll let Eric speak to this as well, but I said, how many of those scenarios, the vehicles you've bought in the last 10 years, could you have had an opportunity to? It's called washing the title. You cannot wash the title in Nevada. So if it comes from out of state, it is going to be already branded as a vehicle, as a salvage or non-repairable vehicle. He said he thought over the course of 10 years, maybe a dozen, that he could have had the potential to wash somehow, but he said I would have no idea how to even begin washing it. But if it pleases the chair, if I could ask Mr. Larkin to maybe address that as well.
Yes, please go ahead.
Eric Larkin for the record, ERICLARKIN. Just to be able to address that, most of the vehicles that we get in that are already a salvage title, those would not be eligible for a clear title at all. What we're suggesting is that the title, when a car comes in like that, the Honda Accord, it has a clear title, but it doesn't run. And we actually, the reason why, if you notice where it is in that picture, it's on a other side of the fence, but a lot of people ask about it. They're always curious. They want to know, hey, is that for sale? Tell me a little bit more about that. Or, hey, I had one of those growing up. So we're not looking to do anything that would allow for a salvage or branded title to be turned into a clean title. That's absolutely not anything that we would want at all, period, nor should be able to happen. But if a clean titled vehicle came in, we would like to be able to have the ability to sell that on title only.
And Mr. Chairman, Warren Hardy, I would add to that. We're happy. We'd be fine with a restriction in the bill that says we can't do this on a title that we don't purchase as a clean title. And that's just going to eliminate so many of the possibilities that you're talking about. And again, I wouldn't even know how to wash a title in Nevada, but they're clean titles. And so what we're doing is taking an otherwise clean title and turning it into a salvage title in order to sell the vehicle. So we would like to continue to have it as a clean title. In addition, in these scenarios, if it comes in with a clean title, it gives us the ability to pay the person that's bringing it in more money too, because we will know we have this scenario available to us instead of putting this truck on the line and having it picked apart. We know we have this scenario to sell it to somebody if they like, and we can give more money to the individual that brought the car in to sell it. But the restriction of having us be able to do this on clean title vehicles only is not a problem for us. That's our intent.
I'm still concerned, and I didn't hear the answer in there about what we do to protect the people buying these cars, to make sure that okay, Mr. Larkin, I'm sure, would never wash a title, but it sounds like we're putting a law into place that could facilitate washing titles. So we got to look out for the worst actors here, and that's what I'm concerned about. How do we protect Nevadans buying cars?
Thank you again, Warren Hardy, for the record. Unfortunately, these things are never exact sciences, and sometimes we just have to say, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. All we can do is restrict, to the extent possible, the opportunity for that to happen. But the larger good is that somebody will have a vehicle that has usable life in it, that has reliable transportation for far under market value. But we're open to any concepts or amendments. I am going to be discussing that point with the DMV. I think I did indicate that I've spoken with the DMV, but they haven't seen the new amendment. So I do want to clear on that point with them to make sure we're not opening up. I think we've narrowed it as much as we can. But yeah, there are possibilities somebody could bring a wrecked car into an auto wrecker that has front end damage or that has some kind of a damage that makes it non-repairable. It's not going to apply in this case because the value of the vehicle doesn't warrant restoring it or going through it. If this had front end or damage on it, now it's a $15,000 repair to get it back on the road. And people aren't going to do it. So that narrows it down to what you pointed out, Assemblyman Carter, in terms of water damage of some kind, which isn't always visible. But again, the overwhelming majority of those, people don't just say, oh, I got water damage in my car, I'm going to take it to an auto wrecker and sell it for $400. They make an insurance claim. The insurance gets a hold of it. The insurance looks at it and says, this is a total loss vehicle, branded as a total loss vehicle, branded as a salvage vehicle. So it's hard for me to imagine a scenario. It could happen. If you're asking me if it could never happen, sure, it could happen, but it would take somebody saying, I'm not going to put this through my insurance claim. I'm just going to buy a brand new car. I'm going to take this down and get $200 for it. Because the process before that brands it as a title. And therefore, we will not sell it under this scenario because we can't get a clean title on it anyway because it's already branded.
Thank you. Additional questions, members of the committee? All right. Seeing none, thank you both for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
With that, we'll move on to testimony. We'll start with testimony in support of Assembly Bill 384. Anyone wishing to provide testimony in support, either in Carson City or Las Vegas, please come forward. Seeing none at this time, BPS, can we see if anyone wishes to provide testimony in support of AB 384 by phone?
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 384. Seeing nobody coming forward at this time, BPS, has anyone joined us by phone?
There are no callers at this time.
And finally, we'll move to testimony in neutral on Assembly Bill 384. Welcome, Mr. McKay, whenever you're ready.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Andrew McKay, Executive Director with the Franchise Auto Dealers Association. Want to thank Mr. Hardy and the Assemblyman for this bill. The reason I think I'm in neutral is the pendency is we're massaging this this amendment to make it work. I think the former senator clearly laid out your concerns, Assemblyman Carter, but I do want to put a little context to it. And he's absolutely right. Anytime a vehicle is a water damaged or flood damaged vehicle, it is immediately branded and it's stuck there forever. And we see those at our dealership from certain states that don't use what is commonly known as MVITIS, the National Motor Vehicle Information Tracking Titling System, excuse me. And somebody will trade a vehicle in, will do the reassignment of title, and then you find out, in fact, that's a bonded vehicle. Well, somebody made off by trading that vehicle in, got 20 grand for it. Then we do the reassignment of title and the bond pops up on it, or the brand, excuse me, and then literally the value of that vehicle is 50, 60, 70% less. So there is a robust system in place, and it's national, and it's getting better by the minute. The fact that this is going to be allowed from licensed auto wreckers, they're going to have the title and their ability to wash that title from a flooded vehicle. I'm not going to profess and say criminals are criminals. Let's not fool ourselves. Somebody will try to do it. You're never going to stop that activity, but I think ultimately the fact of when you talk about diminished value, both from the selling end, they trade it into if that's the proper term, to to the auto wrecker, as well as the individual that wants to purchase and then restore that vehicle to be able to drive it. That Honda Civic's a great example. I mean, it was in the Midwest. A dealer bought one of those vehicles from a customer that put over 1 million miles on the vehicle just to put it in his showroom to show how robust the Honda is. Would he have been able to buy that? Would he have bought it had he had a clean title? That's to be determined. You know, I think this bill is the intentions are really good, and the amendment, when we massage it out, we'll probably address it. But Mr. Chair, I'm available for any questions from the committee if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Members, are there any questions for Mr. McKay? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Seeing no one else at this time wishing to provide testimony in neutral in person, BPS, has anyone joined us by phone?
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Hafen, would you like to provide any closing comments? It's optional.
I just want to say thank you and then let you guys know that we will continue to work on the amendment with the DMV and Mr. McKay to try to address Assemblyman Carter's concerns, because I do appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll close the hearing on Assembly Bill 384. That brings us to the last item on our agenda today, which is public comment. Again, we'll ask anyone wishing to make public comment to limit their remarks to 2 minutes, and please clearly state and spell their name for the record before proceeding. Do we have anyone wishing to make public comment either here in Carson City or in Las Vegas? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anyone wishing to make public comment by phone?
The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
All right, thank you. Well, members, that concludes our business for today. Our next meeting will be in April. It'll be April 4th at 1:30 p.m., where we'll have, I think, 3 bill hearings, including a couple from one of our members, Assemblyman Carter. Thank you all for your time and attention today. This meeting's adjourned.